Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Now, very happy to say that we're joined by Mr. David Brady. Hello.
Joseph, how's things?
I'm very well. Mike Quirke with us as well. Hi, Mike.
I don't get the mister. Good to see you, Joe.
Yeah, no, great to have you on. Fellas, couple of things. We'll talk Kerry Tyrone for sure, because I think as the game approaches, we're all kind of suddenly realising we have a game to look forward to. I'm sure that's not the case in Kerry, Mike. It's been a long 5 weeks, I'm sure, for a game, but the rest of us are suddenly getting used to the idea. But Kevin McStay had a piece in the Irish Times which drew a lot of comment and opinion, and people were interested in where he was coming from. So for those of you who haven't had a chance to look at it, in effect, McStay was saying that the culture in GAA of like the aggro, hard man, that kind of machismo culture in the GAA, he said it's the greatest stain on the GAA. And so he gave a ton of anecdotes, which I suspect GAA people up and down the country have. So, like, to be fair, by his own admission, he was harking back here a lot to the 80s and 90s. So he talked about the 80s jaws being smashed off the ball, runs being checked with shoulders to the face. So he has lines like, I once saw a promising young Mayo player hit so badly in a club match that he never played properly again. I had my teeth damaged in a school final against Derry. It was a punch to the side of the mouth. Martin Carney has told me about a vicious assault in a championship game against Sligo. He got a smashed nose and lost much of his sense of smell permanently. This stuff was happening all over Ireland. He says, to be classed as soft or windy is the worst reputation a Gaelic footballer can have. It's much better to be labelled an assassin or a thug. He has one more story here, for instance. My brother Paul, more of a basketball player, he was playing full forward once in a club match. He could see the fullback was, let's say, emotional before the throw-in. As my brother trotted in before the start of the game, the fullback trotted out. Paul presumed he was going to shake hands. The guy punched him on the nose and broke it for no reason. It was insane stuff, and it happened everywhere. So he says, Kevin McStay, that he asked Sean Kavanagh, obviously on RTE duty, about what it's like now, and presumed that, the game was pretty clean. But he says that Kavanagh said to him that the dark arts of the modern game produces a meaner type of intimidation. It's a different type of violence, more psychological. Sledging, late knee tackles, constant holding of the ball, blocking runs, grappling, nippling, even eye gouging and biting. And so McStay concludes, I'm asking the question here, why do we accept that kind of intimidation of our star players? These guys get special treatment, cynical treatment, and we're allowing ordinary players to cancel the special skills of these players through foul means. Like I said, drew a lot of reaction. David, your thoughts on it? Obviously, McStay's talking about 1980s, 1990s territory, when I would suspect those moments of just sheer violence, like punches, were more routine than they are now. And he's also talking about what Sean Kavanagh's talking about, what goes on in the game in a modern way. Is that still a stain on the GAA? Is there still a problem with this kind of stuff in the GAA, or is it all fair in love and war?
Look, I don't think it's a case of all fair in love and war, and Kevin's harping bound to the 80s and 90s. Look, this is, the physicality and sometimes the brutality of what goes on in GAA games is clear to be seen in the present and in the past. And again, probably not as much on a national stage that we see from inter-county teams, but it is rife, right from the top and more so down to the bottom. Look, I know I'm on video, but I take my teeth out, and I have 7 false teeth. 4 of them broken with a headbutt back in the days, and broken so badly that I can't put steel pillars into my gums because they were shattered as well. And look, when you're playing football for 20 years, you're not going to come away unscathed. But it has no place at any stage, at any time, at any level in football. And I think we got to focus on what is really happening now and not what really happened in the past. And I think for me, if I'm going toe-to-toe with Mike Quirke, he's a big unit. We'll give it all we have. But what goes on now is, and I think it is, the verbal part of it. It's the absolute scutter talk that comes out of players' mouth. And it's you know what? There's no county immune from it. And there's one reason, and I have to say it. It's happening, and they're getting away with it because it's been allowed. And I have to, the point in case I make is, it's like you, Joe, presenting the show, and what you've developed over the last 10 years, you have to do the production, you have to do the video. It's too much for one man to do and to control on a pitch for one referee. And I think there has to be. And we have changed the dynamics so much in GAA and the rules, but there's still responsibility lies with one man, and that workload is too much because you can't control every aspect of the game with just one whistle. And I do think there has to be help, and there has to be assistance given to referees to make it that, you know, if we're watching Tyrone and Kerry on this weekend, there has to be the linesmen and the umpires, especially the umpires, because a lot of the action takes place 20 yards from goal, you know, either end. And I think we have to look at replacing umpires as officiating referees in the game.
And David, at club level, would you say that the culture of the occasional headbutt or the occasional punch, you know, the more violent outbursts that we don't see as much at inter-county level anymore, would you say at club level in 2021 that's still there, and that you're still liable to see that at club level a bit more?
Of course, yeah. It just doesn't get the attention, and it's only talked about in the local, or it's only talked about in you know, in the car park afterwards, or in the local pub. It's not. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't get the. But it happens, and again we're creating athletes, and we're creating sometimes a specimen of a man that is, you know, we train Tuesday, Thursday, but it's what they do. It's that pumped up energy and aggression that's translated from a gym. You know, especially in a club scene, strength and conditioning is kind of a lot different at top level inter-county. But guys just spend all their time and they might go to the gym on a Monday, train Tuesday, gym Wednesday, train Thursday, do a little bit of gym and on a Friday, and they spend more time in a gym than they do really on a football field. No one spends 3 to 4 hours practicing, taking points. They go to the gym because I think that pent up energy is widespread.
Mike, what's your perspective on all this?
I'm not sure, really. I think the game has certainly become an awful lot more sanitized than those days of the 80s and 90s. Like, some of the most heinous acts I've ever seen have been during inter-county challenge games back in the day, where, you know, fellas were just, you know, punching people, kicking people, and there was no sanctions. A referee, if they sent you off in a challenge game, it was nearly a badge of honour. There was no such thing as you were going to get suspended, and then they tidied that up, and now that comes with a suspension if you get sent off in a challenge game. And we actually played a challenge game this year with Laois, and there was somebody sent off in the game, and he was subsequently, you know, suspended for their, you know, next championship game. So I think we have moved to a more sanitized, you know, product in terms of the game of Gaelic football than what was there before. I don't think there's guys, certainly not at inter-county level, carrying out, like, you know, ridiculously thuggish acts. Of course, you're going to have isolated incidents and they'll get notoriety and big, you know, social media stuff. But in general, the game is in a much safer place, I would say, than it was certainly 10 or 20 years ago.
At club level as well, Mike?
It is. Yeah. Obviously, there's probably more of it at club level because they know the same thing isn't there. But it's probably a wider societal thing as much as anything as well, Joe. Like, you know, you could walk down the street and anywhere at 10 o'clock at night and some guy might come up to you and hit you a headbutt. And who knows what they've been doing all week. They mightn't have been in the gym. They mightn't have been training. There's a far wider issue than just the you know, the Gaelic games issue or the Gaelic football issue. But I would still think, you know, if you take all the games and you look at them in the last 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, whatever you want, we have far less, like, there isn't that culture of managers or players going out, you know, with a determination to act in that kind of a thuggish manner and to look to hurt people. That I don't see that as a part of the game anymore. And I think we've moved to a much better place. The stuff with the verbals, I think, are so difficult to actually officiate or to pick up, because I can whisper something into your ear that is far more insulting than anything I could possibly shout at you. And no matter how many referees on the field, it's really, really difficult to isolate who's the instigator of those things and really give them a fair punishment. And oftentimes it's the guy who reacts to that instigation that is the guy that receives a punishment or the double yellow. Yeah. So it's very hard to measure those. But I think that's your broader cultural issue where, when guys are preparing for games, when they're training for opposition, they're not looking at how we can insult their family or insult their moms or their wives or their girlfriends or their kids. Now we're focusing more on the game. I would like to think that is the way that the GAA is going, and certainly that would be my experience in the last 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah. And David, on the sledging, on the verbals and the whispers in the ear and things being said, I presume that was a big part of your day as well as the kind of the other stuff.
No, honestly, well, if anyone did say or come up and start a verb or sledging or verb, I'm going, you know what, I have this guy in my pocket. I see it as a massive sign of weakness. And again, I do know certain teams would, no matter what, anytime a free taker misses a free, it's someone's job to go and say, you're not too hot today, Mike, are you? You're two missed out of three, Mike. It's that kind of sly, low remark, and you're going, but that's a part and parcel of the game.
Yeah.
Because you want to infiltrate the mind of a free taker to say, and again, sometimes
I wouldn't think that's unique to GAA either. That bit of sledging. This is sport on the edge as well. So we got to be realistic as well.
Yeah, look, that's whether it's a free throw in basketball or a penalty in soccer. Anyone that misses a penalty in soccer, the same thing is they're nearly laughed at. But yeah, and so many times we'll see pictures in the paper on Monday, and there'll be two guys facing up to each other and smiling, and one is smiling, the other one is like, and it's and again, monkey see, monkey does, and that's what is in that right down through the system. But there is certain scenarios and situations, and even from a goalkeeper's perspective, they like to remind a goalkeeper that your last two kickouts didn't hit their mark when he's going, that kind of thing. But there is some other low life remarks made, and thankfully I would say they're very, very rare. But the thing is, if Mike says it to me, as something very disparaging that he knows, so a personal comment, I'm nearly the pussy to go and the one that goes complaining about it. And I think that's
the culture.
That's not that is you're going, oh sure, I can't go and say no what Mike Quirke said to me, and it was low and it was personal, and he knew something about me, and that's the Machismo kind of culture, I guess. In a sense, he's talking about. It's funny, Mike. All that happens now when lads get in, got to rip the jerseys. That's mission one. Yeah. Rip the jerseys has become like your essential when you're involved now.
Yeah, but it used to be punching. No, if fellas are, if there's people now getting into if you see one of your teammates now who's in a perceived spot of bother and he's outnumbered by one or two, players now are told, you have to back up your teammate and you have to get in there. But the last thing you can do is raise your hands and punch anybody. So you want to be, and like intimidation or physicality has to be, maybe not intimidation as much, but physicality and that bit of brutality has to be a part of the game. It's a contact gladiatorial game. Like that's why we fill Croke Park. Of course, the skills are a part of it, but it's also, you have to, like John Small's hit is probably, a lot of this stuff has come from the John Small hit and was that right, and Julia Kerr and all this kind of stuff. Like that physicality still has to be maintained in Gaelic football, obviously safely, because nobody wants to see anybody getting injured.
Sorry to interrupt. Oh, well, the small thing, to be fair, was him trying to, give a whack of his shoulder, and obviously he mistimed it.
Yeah.
I think more maybe what you could be talking about here is, you do in GAA, if we're talking about Dublin and Mayo as the elite of what GAA has to offer, you wouldn't see some of the off the ball, basically elbows and forearms into people's faces off the ball. You wouldn't see that in rugby or soccer, I think, to the same extent. Like we saw a couple of moments there now which kind of definitely harked back to what McStay's talking about, Mike.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. Like you're talking about the James McCarthy one and stuff coming out, but like we have rules in place to deal with that, Joe. Like, and if it's not spotted on the day, then obviously he should have received a red card. You can't strike somebody into the throat with an elbow, and like there's, like David mentioned, umpires and linesmen, and then if not, it should be retrospective that you do get a ban for doing something like that, and it should be totally, not a part of our game. But I would still suggest that those things are still far fewer now than they were 15, 20 years ago, when it was largely lawless. Like you could literally do anything and maybe you might get a ticking or something like that. And fellas were going home with serious injuries. And it was a bit of a laugh that, Jesus, I clattered this. We played Meath in a challenge game one year, lads. And I want, like, it actually got Like, and I wouldn't scare too easy. It was actually frightening, like midway through the second half with the stuff that was going on, because you knew there was just another incident waiting to happen, and when it did, it was another case of craziness. And I just think all that stuff has become so much more sanitized now than it was then.
No, I think that's pretty true.
On that point, again, look, it's not Dublin Mayo, but the rivalry that has been there, them players have played each other in semi-finals and finals. You know, over the last 10 years, 8 times has been major challenges, and they know each other so well. And it is a fantastic rivalry, and it's just a little pity that a lot of the quality or a lot of the epic game that we have is overshadowed. But we have to talk about it. And again, it goes back to, I need help here. And a referee would be saying that now. Any of the top referees in the country would be saying, I need help. Because with the pace of the game, you don't know is the kick out going, you know, normally a referee in our days would be going out 45, 50 yards, this is where it's coming. I know it's in around here, I'll pick one of these two midfielders. But now it's going 20 yards to the left or right. Sometimes it's going 60 yards down. And the pace of the game for a referee to keep up with it. It's a hard job. But again, you don't know what's been said at close quarters, really, and an umpire find it very hard. But again, I would think there would be precedents to say after a free take or after someone misses a shot or after something that they can't direct. The direction of verbals can't be directed to that player, and it can be pointed out, and a sufficient penalty awarded.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting one anyway, and loads of text coming in, as you can imagine, loads of stories of what's going on at club level and what people see, and people saying, look, it still is definitely in the DNA of GAA when there's no cameras around.
It is, yeah. Between breaking, I broke my jaw 3 times, and twice it was intentional. From my teeth, that was intentional, and again. That's in the lifetime of football.
Yeah.
But it does go on. And one thing I think, I started playing around 93, 94. And some of the restrooms I came out of, I can honestly tell you, I don't know where I was going or what I was doing, but my head was gone.
Yeah.
Because managers back then were roaring, shouting on your toes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and you're going, and again, and you're going, you're coming out. But now it's more measured, it's more approached. There's, it's calm, it's measured, it's calculated. But the willingness to lose, or the unwillingness to lose, sometimes leads people to do something that's in not in the interest of I would say the game or our society.
Yeah.
Can I just say, Joe?
Yes.
I think that's a crucial point, to be fair, and I mentioned it. Like, I think it's changed now with. Certainly in my experience, the management and coaching of teams, that it's less of maybe, an emphasis or a focus on let's test them out, let's test our mettle here mentally, let's suss out the weak fellas and really prey on those, as opposed to what do we need to do to be very good here when we have the ball, when we don't have the ball. And that extra little bit of stuff, I don't think is getting the same kind of emphasis that it once did. And I think that's the kind of the shape or the direction and the culture of the way the game is being coached and the way it's going to a slightly more positive place, I would argue,
Okay. Well, that's interesting to get your thoughts on all that, fellas. To move to Kerry Tyrone before the clock comes against us. And I may be way off here, and this is kind of water under the bridge a little bit, but just to mention it, I heard Kieran Murphy make this point in Second Captains earlier, and I totally agree with him, really. I hadn't read Declan Bogue's interview with Fergal Logan, the Tyrone joint manager, until today. This was in the Irish Examiner a couple of weeks back, or maybe 2-3 weeks back. Declan Bogue spoke to Fergal Logan. So 17 players, 4 backroom team with COVID. There was 1 in hospital. Hopefully everyone is okay. And Fergal, he was talking in this interview about how they had experts in the camp, UCD and St Vincent's credentials, who had written a report to make it very clear that it was unsafe to play the game when it was due and all that kind of stuff. And, Logan was talking about long COVID, and he says, I'm very concerned next January when Tyrone try to line up a team of players and they aren't fit, if there's any residual issues arising from this phase of COVID in our panel. So, he's concerned about long COVID. But where it gets interesting for me in the context of, well, I wonder, do they have some questions to answer, or will there be questions asked? He was asked about vaccination uptake in the camp, right? And so, look, he said it's personal choice, which I would agree with. But he says here, Fergal Logan, it was late May or June until vaccines were available to the age group of this team. Now, he said, in fairness, part of the consideration this year was because it was a compressed league and championship, we were anxious that if guys were vaccinated, they might go under for 2 weeks, and that might inhibit their performance. He said, vaccination has been a conundrum. I was kind of amazed to read that for a few reasons. So, like, first of all, concerned about 2 weeks inhibiting performance. Like, I don't know many people who've been inhibited for 2 weeks because of the vaccine. I think that's unlikely. But he says you'd be 2 weeks down with the vaccine. I would question that. But just the lack of perspective there. We're talking about amateur players, one who's been hospitalised. We're talking about parents. We're talking about vulnerable people and their families. Like, worried about a small change or their performance at training for 2 weeks not being that good back in May as a reason to postpone getting the vaccine. I think that's really questionable. Now, players might have, no perspective, and they say, well, screw this, I'll delay the vaccine, I want to play well in a couple of weeks. I get that, but I think management maybe should have been taking a lead here and saying, look, lads, it's your health. I mean, to say that the vaccination has been a conundrum didn't seem right to me at all. And then, look, the other obvious thing which jumps off the page, and I don't know how it didn't occur to him when he's given the interview, I mean, you're worried about your performance, about disruption. Try a COVID outbreak. Like, look what's happened, And I checked, their first match was on the 10th of July against Cavan. We're talking May, June here when they could have got the vaccine. So, I don't know, will questions be asked? I don't know if he meant to give away all that information. Maybe Declan Bowe caught him with the good question on vaccinations. But I'd have to say, Mike, that age is very questionably for me.
Yeah, it's awful. It's negligent. Certainly, if it was a diktat from management, which I would have been very, very surprised at, you would still think that these guys are all, well-rounded, educated young men who, know that the only conundrum with the vaccine is how quickly can I get it in my arm, because obviously long-term gain is much more important than that short-term view of maybe being under the weather for 2 weeks. I mean, I don't know where they're getting the information about being under the weather for 2 weeks. I had a sore arm for about 20 minutes and that was about the size of it. But it's very strange. And I think that's why the noise at Croke Park were not willing to give them that extra week extension until Kerry intervened and said, listen, we're happy to do that. I think a lot of that, when you put all that stuff together, they're very, very fortunate to actually come out with, an extra week to allow them to play the game, because, there is no excuse for, if the vaccine is available. Obviously, everybody has their own personal choice whether they want to get vaccinated or not. But if it's a team thing, if it's coming from the top level to say this is a bad idea, lads, because it might inhibit your performance here in the next couple of weeks training, well, then they're hugely fortunate to come out the other side. And to be worried about the signs of long COVID next January, if they were told not to go and get vaccinated, that's a really strange one for me. Yeah, like hugely strange.
Yeah, it is strange. Like, I don't know what they said. His quote again is, we were anxious that if guys were vaccinated, they might go under for 2 weeks and that might inhibit their performance. Vaccination has been a conundrum. So they are his words. I'm not misquoting him there. So
massively surprising. And the only thing I know from some friends in the UK as well, that the side effect of the AstraZeneca was and is probably more side effects. But at the end of the day, if you have a window of a few days, obviously there might be one player, if you were playing this weekend, that was called, say, on yesterday, you're going, I can we put it off until Monday? But to put the most important thing a manager can do, and I have the height of respect for Fergal Lurgan. He is a very, very good man.
Yeah.
And I was massively surprised when I read that quote as well. But you have to put the welfare of your players and the health of them, their families, the people they work with, and also the guys internally in your squad as paramount. And there is question to answer, and I think maybe that's why Croke Park didn't. Like the Curry statement, Mike did say that there was fair play and they would, but at the end of the day, they did say that they would took every precaution to protect their own players.
Yeah. What about the game itself then, Mike? So I'm not kidding, Mike, and I know you were at the game for us. just, you're busy, you're running around, and I was trying to think, when did Kerry, I was trying to think today, when did Kerry last play? Did they hammer Cork? Was it 2? Oh, and then I was like, the Cork in the rain was last year. Oh, this was the hammering in the sun. And I remembered you've been there. So we have Kerry beating Cork 4-22 on Cork. They put 3-22 on Clare. They put 1-19 on Tipperary. So their scoring average a game, they've gone up from 18 points a game in Peter Keane's first 2 years to 28 points a game across their 7 league games and their championship games as well. And yet, as Enda McGinley said to the boys this morning on OTB AM, have they been road tested? Have they been taken into the trenches? Not in a while. So what's your feeling on this game?
It's very hard to get a read in it because you just, it has been so long. You're trying to look back at the players that were starting. Peter Keane, I think, came out last week and said that he had a clean bill of health. So that was probably a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So you don't know what's going to happen in the meantime. You have no idea who's going to be available or fit for selection above in Tyrone. So it's a really strange. Like usually when you get to an All-Ireland semi-final stage, you have a very good, clear picture of what's happening and who's playing well and who's going to start and who's not going to start. Whereas this one for me is a real strange one, and it's more so the Tyrone side, because like since they beat Monaghan, it's like is Matty Donnelly going to be fit? Is McKenna going to be fit? Where are they going to play? It's a bit all over the place. But I like it's 7-1 with the bookmakers, which to me is a ludicrous price in this kind of a situation when you just don't know where Kerry are, if they've gone over the top of the hill, if they haven't, because it's really difficult for Kerry as well in this situation to just measure their run properly and get the physical side of it and have that energy that I'm sure they were working on scientifically for a whole year to get this right peak at the right moment, and now it's scuppered a little bit as well. So it's going to be fascinating, and I don't think it's going to be the blowout that a lot of people are predicting it will be, depending on exactly the health of Tyrone and where they are at. If they are at the level that they're fully fit and they can give it a right rattle, then I think we'll have a right good game in our hands. Yeah,
I guess David, that is the unknowable here. What kind of shape do Tyrone players pitch up in?
And you can't take that out of the mindset of the Kerry players either, because that had now is going. No matter what you say, it doesn't matter. These guys are coming in on one leg. It will infiltrate the mindset of the Kerry players. They're going, we're all saying they're coming back from COVID, they've long COVID, they're not going to be fit, they've had none of this, and all of a sudden you have a perfect storm brewing. And it could turn into a dogfight of epic proportions, because Tyrone will not give it up easy. No matter, and they will be kind of unified, and they will be unified in this last 2 or 3 weeks with the COVID scenario and them getting negative press, rightly so, from what we've just discussed in the last 20 minutes. So it is going to. We have only half the picture drawn of the All-Ireland, and it's going to be fascinating to see what the other half is and how. And no matter who comes out of this, they're going to be marked, and there's going to be scars, and there could be 2 weeks then to get your mindset straight into an All-Ireland final after preparing for this game for the last number of weeks, and it was called off, and now it's back on again, and now we play it, and all of a sudden you're waking up and you're less than 13 days away from an All-Ireland final.
Mike, if there's a Kerry worry aside from this very strange build-up and the 5-week gap, what would it be? Because it's very hard to pick holes in what they've done this year. It just looks very good all the way through. The worry is just that you don't know until you get there to see what you're going to face. It's a little bit of an unknown. Defensively, it's all the talk. Are we going to be solid enough to deal with their offensive threat? Because offensively, on the other side of the field, from that half-back line up, I think Kerry are as good as what's left in the competition. It remains to be seen if that full-back line is going to be good enough to hold the Tyrone forwards, whatever, if it's McCurry or whoever's in there. So that's the worry, that's the fear. And then the other one is just it's very hard to predict, are they going to have that energy that they're going to have? I think they probably will, because, Dave was talking about the fact that, there's a perfect storm in terms of maybe Tyrone and they'll be emboldened by their management because of the way their management played it, and because they were strong and powerful in their stance, and they made Croke Park buckle. That's the perception. That's what they'll be looking at. Whereas Kerry, from the other side of it, are going to be pissed off with the whole situation. They're going to feel that Tyrone pulled a stroke in some ways to get
get the game to their best spot for them and to allow all their players the time to recover. You know, while they did everything they were supposed to do, maybe the perception was that Tyrone didn't. So I'm sure Kerry will have a little bit of an edge to him as well. That, listen, these guys are trying to pull a stroke on us now to pull the wool over our eyes and let's be ready to go. And that's the angle that they can go at, and then just to see how they go after knocking the rust off for 5 weeks.
What do Tyrone have, David, that does cause Kerry a few problems? Aside from, you know, taking them to the trenches for the first time, is there stuff about the way Tyrone go about their business?
Look at they have a new dimension, and the new dimension is Brian Dooher and Fergal Logan. And to see what has been pulled out of the hat from a tactical point of view, I don't think they show their full hand in the Ulster Championship, and I think that can be a trump card, because there is a new mindset, new management, and a new way of doing things. Like, again, the McCurrys and these guys, McKenna's, they're out and out class forwards. Have they got the formulation and the format from a defensive point of view to curb the Cliffords of this world, O'Shea's of this world? And there's going to be a major focus on them players. And go back to the very start of our conversation 25 minutes ago, that is going to be there too, and don't think it's not. And there's going to be physicality, and there's going to be verbals, and they will do anything to try and stifle the offensive threat that Kerry pose, which is the biggest the most dangerous forwards in the country are on display.
Who do Mayo want in the final, David?
Who do we want? Doesn't matter, Joe.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, Joe. Doesn't matter. We'll turn up anyway.
You know who they want. Don't be asking questions.
You can bet your bottom dollar you know who we want. Anyway. Hey, if they turn you over on Saturday, I tell you now, I'll be jumping with joy.
You're like Kevin Keegan there now. You're getting excited if you only get with it. Yeah.
No, we've got a case of COVID here in Mayo in the last 10 days. We're all lethargic. We're all tired. We're all coming down with something.
Fellas, thanks so much. Brilliant stuff. Enjoyed the game. Mike Quirke, David Brady, thank you.
See you guys.
Cheers, lads. That's Mike Quirke and David Brady with us there. And again, just to clarify on the Fergal Logan conversation, I don't know what was or wasn't said to the players. I'm just going off his interview here with Declan Bogue in the Irish Examiner, so I want to be fair to him. So I just read out his comments. They may well have, in the end, advised the players to get the vaccine, although he certainly doesn't say that was the case to Declan Bogue. And I'm sure more details will come out, to be fair to them, and they might expand on what was or wasn't said. But that was what he was saying to Declan Bogue a couple of weeks ago about the vaccine situation. We'll take a break, and we're talking Paralympics next.